Hello, thank you to those of you who are joining us. We'll give it just another couple of minutes for people to join the call and then we'll get started. For those of you who just joined us, we're just giving it another minute for people to join after the hour here. We'll get started here in about 30 seconds. Jamie, I know we're already screen sharing, but I'll introduce myself and then let you introduce yourself, okay?
Sounds great.
Thanks. All right, welcome everyone to this webinar looking at the unified research and digital asset management capabilities with Ex Libris Solutions. My name is Sarah Branch. I'm a research solutions specialist with Ex Libris. I've been with the company for 4 years and I'm the product expert for Esploro. And I'll let my colleague joining us on the call today, Jamie, introduce herself.
Thanks, Sarah. My name's Jamie Katsuba, and I am the Solutions Architecture Team Lead for North America. We primarily work on Alma and other areas of the platform. I'm coming to you from Cleveland, Ohio, and I'll be focused on the digital asset portion of today's presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jamie. We do have a full agenda for you today, so we're going to go ahead and just jump right in. The plan is to briefly introduce Esploro, which will be my job, and provide a little bit of a live demonstration, particularly highlighting the SmartHarvesting, the scholar profiles, the discovery portal, and analytics. And then Jamie will take over to review Alma Digital with an overview of digital resources and collections, some really fantastic customer examples, and talking about some accessibility and inclusion. We will try to leave a few minutes at the end for questions, so please feel free to put your questions in the chat or the Q&A. We have our team here who will keep an eye on that so that we have some opportunities to respond at the end. I wanted to begin by talking about, more generally, about the Ex Libris Higher Ed Cloud platform. We know that a challenge faced by library staff and patrons is the need to use multiple systems to access their resources. So many libraries have dedicated systems in addition to the library management system for digital assets and scholarship, respectively. The result of that is that staff and users are then oftentimes working in very siloed systems. Staff have to go through duplicated data entry. Users are searching across multiple discovery platforms. And what we want to do is really unify that. Ex Libris's Higher Ed Cloud platform has the unique advantage of really being able to offer that to offer unifying complementary solutions that really provide more efficient and strategic workflows for both staff and patrons. And even better for customers using Ex Libris's Alma as their library management system, you can really leverage that infrastructure to support both your digital and scholarly asset management. We've put together this slide to really highlight how those two solutions work together, Esploro for your research services management and Alma Digital for your digital assets management. What you're seeing here is really outlining the organization and structure of the two solutions. So many institutions currently house both that type of content in a single repository. With Alma and the higher ed solution platform here, what we would do is take those scholarly assets and we'd put them in Esploro. Esploro is a next generation repository that has been specifically developed to provide support, management, and discovery of research and scholarly assets, as well as creative endeavors. Truly any content that your faculty, researchers, and institution would qualify as scholarly. Alma Digital then can host all of your digital objects, anything that wouldn't necessarily qualify as scholarship or research. And so while there are separate deposit workflows and dedicated discovery platforms for both Esploro and Alma Digital and their respective content, what's really great is the fact that it's all in Alma means that you still have unified discovery in Primo. All of that content is still stored on the same higher ed cloud platform. And so there's a lot of unity in the management of those scholarly assets and digital objects, except that they benefit from having dedicated workflows and discovery systems that really meet the needs of that different type of content. So talking about Esploro, we always get the question, what exactly is Esploro? Esploro is a research information management solution with a comprehensive institutional repository at its core. Esploro provides a multitude of critical research management functions, including, of course, the repository itself for collecting and sharing the intellectual output of the institution. And I always like to emphasize here that with the development of Esploro, we've really focused on ensuring that we can support multiple data models to support all types of scholarship. So while the core research asset repository schema is based on DataCite, it's been extended so that it also incorporates relevant fields from Dublin Core, and additional tags are added to support discipline-specific schemas. And what's very important here is truly the ability for Esploro to support research and scholarly content across all disciplines and to ensure that all types of researchers and research disciplines are represented here in the repository. In addition to the repository, Esploro also has researcher profiles, which serve to increase the visibility and impact of your experts, your researchers, and certainly increasing the visibility of themselves and their research, not only within their own field, but beyond, opening doors to new audiences and collaborators via that public-facing discovery portal. And then, of course, also hosting analytics. Analytics, many of you are already familiar with through your Alma use, but leveraging that for these dedicated Esploro research subject areas to create and deliver intelligent data-driven analytics and metrics on your research enterprise. This slide really pulls this all together in a single slide. I won't go through everything in detail because we have limited time today. But what I did want to emphasize in the middle of that slide, you do see the Research Information Hub, which is the repository. We refer to it as the Research Information Hub because we're really elevating what is the traditional repository, and we're really taking advantage of the skills and expertise of the library staff, particularly regarding data and metadata management. And in that repository, institutions can actually house not only information about their scholarly outputs, but also information about awarded grants, the activities that their researchers are engaging in, such as teaching and service work, as well as projects and even media mentions. So Esploro as a repository really does serve as a comprehensive hub for the broad scope of information and data that's relevant to the research enterprise. I also wanted to emphasize here that while Esploro itself is not open software, we do like to call it an open tool. So all of the data in Esploro can be exported. You can import new data into Esploro. We don't view any of this data as proprietary to us. It's your data. And so you can really use Esploro as a comprehensive data source to feed other internal systems, whether that might be grant systems, research management systems, or anything of that nature. So you can use Esploro to capture your data, and then you can use Esploro as a source to improve other internal systems as well. There are also a number of integrations and partnerships with Esploro. You'll see some of this when I switch over to the demo in a minute, such as the altmetric badge, which appears on the asset records in Esploro. But if you subscribe to Crossref and DataCite, you can also mint DOIs in Esploro. We've worked closely with the Google Scholar team to ensure SEO optimization for the content in Esploro. And perhaps most excitedly, we will have two-way integration with ORCID, so that Esploro can both capture information directly from ORCID as well as push information to ORCID. The first live functionality there is coming in the first half of this year. And since I know we have an audience who's Alma users, I did just want to highlight some key integrations here between Esploro and Alma. For example, the shared task list, which you may be familiar with, and then metadata enrichment from the CDI, which you'll see in a moment. The other bullets that you see here, such as being able to create research assets from Alma records, or even creating bibliographic records from a research asset record in Esploro, are on our roadmap for this year and next. The last comment I want to make before we get to see some live functionality in Esploro is just putting up our Esploro community worldwide. I like to share this slide because you can really see the diversity of institutions who have partnered with us on Esploro. In Florida, you see a couple of their Florida Gulf Coast University, as well as the University of West Florida. You see key R1 institutions like Iowa and Rutgers, smaller teaching-focused institutions, including Eckerd, and the University of St. Thomas, and even large government research institutions like the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. I like to highlight this diversity in partnership because I think it really shows the flexibility of Esploro and exactly how much potential functionality is there. So all of these partners have been able to adopt Esploro and really make it work for them, serve whatever their strategic institutional needs and goals are. All right, and with that, I want to move into showing you a little bit of live functionality here in Esploro. And I wanted to start by talking about the smart harvesting. So I'm actually going to shift gears here and pull up my Esploro administrative user interface. That's what you're looking at here. If you're an Alma user, this will look very familiar to you. While it is technically outside the Alma administrative user interface, you will see that really the roles and workflows are exactly the same. Now you may be asking why we've pulled Esploro administration out from Alma administration, and there's a good reason for that. We understand that research information management is often partnered with multiple stakeholders on campus outside of the library, like the research office or sponsored programs. And so this allows you to give people in those offices administrative access to Esploro as well, without giving them access to your library data and workflows. Again, everything here is role-based, so anybody who is an admin can have access to select functionality. Showing the other three elements that we're looking at here in the system, this is the Esploro dedicated discovery portal. So this is our public-facing discovery portal. This is where a user, either internal or external to the institution, could go to search for either assets in the repository, as you're seeing here, or I can actually look for researchers as well. So those researcher profiles are optional, but if you do choose to have those, then I can search for expertise that I might be interested in here. In this case, I'll just put in, psychology, and search for my researchers. And I can either scope this search to look at a specific name, somebody's disciplinary affiliation, or even a topic of interest that they might have expertise in. And then, of course, we have the researcher profiles themselves. I'm going to pull up an example of one here. So this is for potential professor, Dr. Vanessa Smith. Just pointing out the elements that you do see on the expert profile. It's very comprehensive in what faculty members can represent. So we have a nice overview of somebody's expertise. We can have live links to their other sites. We have their full list of outputs here, and in this case you can see that it breaks it out by different asset categories and then types within that category. So for Dr. Smith's publications, we have journal articles, conference proceedings, chapters, reports, books. She has a data set. She could also have content related to teaching and learning, creative endeavors. We have over 150 deposit forms now for different asset types. Again, really ensuring that Esploro can represent all disciplines. We also have awarded grants information, media mentions, so that faculty can really highlight when their work is getting picked up and talked about outside of academia. Projects, so that researchers can list what they're currently working on, even if it hasn't yet translated into research output. And then just released in January, their activities, so that faculty can list their teaching and service activities, whether that's acting as a committee member, teaching classes, serving as a reviewer on journal articles, and a variety of other things. So really a full and comprehensive researcher profile. Now, what you might have noticed when I opened the Outputs tab here is exactly how much content I have for Vanessa listed on her profile. This is one of the greatest challenges institutional repositories face, how to actually capture all of that content. Current workflows are often very manual, either for library staff members or for the researchers themselves, and we know that this contributes to many institutional repositories not having comprehensive representation of scholarship from the institution. The way that we've addressed that in Esploro is with a number of methods of adding content and trying to automate that as much as possible. So going back to my administrative user interface here, I want to just open up under my repository tab here, my smart harvesting options. Smart harvesting is an important element of Esploro that really sets it apart from other repositories in the marketplace. So we are leveraging our CDI, our Central Discovery Index, which feeds our Primo and Summon library discovery systems. We're leveraging all of that content to actually be able to automatically identify research assets that belong to affiliated researchers and bring that content into the system. In fact, when we start to build out your repository, there's a multi-stage process here. The first being that we will, of course, migrate all of the existing content in your repository. Second, what we call smart expansion. We can take any assets that are known, so assets you may have DOIs or PubMed ID or titles from, because they're in an ORCID list, a citation list, or a faculty reporting system. We can take those and run them against the CDI to auto-populate the metadata and records. And then after that, we'll use the smart harvesting to fill in the gaps, any of that content that you may be unaware of. With the smart harvesting, we're using a machine learning algorithm to analyze metadata related to the researcher, including researcher name, name variants, affiliation, research topics, and even semantic closeness across abstracts to identify candidate assets that belong to the researcher at your institution and bring them into the system. There is a great and effective process of deduplication on the back end as well, so that you can be sure you're getting quality, accurate records and not duplicating your repository. To give you an example of what this looks like, we're going to go back to Vanessa here for a minute. And to run the smart harvesting job is really quite simple. Again, I go to my repository, I open my smart harvesting profiles, and in this case, I'm running against the CDI. All I have to do is create a set of researchers from my institution and use that set to run the smart harvesting. There's not much to see once you do that because it's all happening on the back end, so I can pull up my author matching approval task list here. This is where I would be able to see all of the assets that have been brought in through this smart harvesting job. You'll see when we look at assets that they all have a status pending approval or manually approved. You can automatically set based on different criteria whether you would like these assets to be automatically approved or reviewed by a staff member. They also all come in with a rank from very strong to strong and uncertain. That is the kind of information you could use to determine your approval process. Now, actually seeing how effective this is difficult in this format, so I'm actually switching into an Excel spreadsheet here for some of Vanessa's work. This is the result of a smart harvesting job run specifically for that researcher, Vanessa Smith. In this case, what you can see is she's in psychology. I ran her through the smart harvesting. And if we scroll all the way down here, what you'll notice that when we run the smart harvesting job for a researcher the first time, it's retrospective. It's going to capture her publications across the entire history of her career. Now, I never like to say, just trust me, this is all of her work. So what I actually do is I take everything that was found in Esploro, which you're seeing here in column A, and then I verify it. And in this case, you can really see the value of having a tool that pulls all of this researcher's scholarship into a single place, because even trying to verify this content required me going to multiple sources, including ORCID, her faculty website, and Google Scholar. I, of course, also make note of anything that Smart Harvesting may have missed. We're never arguing that Smart Harvesting is going to capture 100% of content, but that consistently it'll be 80 or 90%. Altogether, if I look at everything that I found for her across Esploro and these other sources, I came up with 63 specific assets, and 85% of those were captured by Esploro. Fun fact, it captured 100% of her journal articles, but it missed a few book chapters and conference proceedings. Once you've run Smart Harvesting the first time, whether that's at implementation or when a new researcher joins the institution, you can actually set it as a scheduled job to then run every single week. This is important to keeping the repository up to date. So no longer are you dependent on a faculty member or a researcher telling you when they publish something. Instead, that Smart Harvesting job can run weekly to identify new content. A great example being what you see highlighted here in yellow, which is a publication that Vanessa just released this current year in 2022. Smart Harvesting was able to identify it. I have it in my repository. And because those expert profiles are linked specifically to that repository, when I go to her profile and her outputs, you can see that that 2022 article is listed here as well. And again, Vanessa, as the researcher, did not have to do anything to ensure that her most recent publication is on her profile or discoverable in the repository, and neither did the library staff once that Smart Harvesting job was running automatically. The other thing that I want to mention here in Esploro is talking about the analytics. Oh, and excuse me, let me step back. I had actually pulled together a couple examples of the Smart Harvesting and wanted to show you the overall summary of that. So I had a professor of education, engineering, psychology, who was Vanessa, and art. And as you can see, again, we're hitting that 80 to 90% representation of content. Now, for some of these researchers, I did contrast that with the representation of their research in their existing institutional repositories, which you can see was quite low here, but that is in no way unusual for many existing institutional repositories. So you can really imagine the benefit of having this automation of Smart Harvesting, as well as being able to simply bulk deposit with a title or DOI and populate that from the CDI, or just bulk deposit with a CSV file to easily populate that repository. The last element of Esploro that I want to mention here is the metrics and analytics. So it's important that we are able to provide repository managers and even potentially, as I mentioned, other institutional stakeholders like research office staff, as well as faculty themselves, with insights into their scholarship and their research activities. Esploro, like Alma, offers those comprehensive analytics and reporting via the Oracle Analytics Server and the data visualization tools. Of course, if you're already familiar with it, it will look exactly the same, except that we're adding additional Esploro research subject areas. Esploro offers multiple analytic subject areas to capture data specific to the research assets in Esploro, research asset usage, grants, projects, and researchers, and of course adding those activities that just came out this month as well. In addition to Esploro being able to serve as the analytic tool for your research information data, you can also upload your own data sets if you want to add more to that. Or, of course, you can export this data from Esploro into various formats so that you can use it in whatever business intelligence software you are familiar with. And just like with Alma, you can create you can use out-of-the-box reports, or you can create your own reports as well. I wanted to highlight a couple of great examples of the Esploro analytics that we've seen used across our customers. One being supporting many of the library tasks and initiatives like emerging trends and needs in the research landscape. So this was a really nice report that one of our customers ran, where they were actually looking at the percentage of their publications that were in open science and open access journals here. And I just think it's so great because you can really see exactly the trend as it has followed shifts in trends in academia as well, but also looking at the content in their own repository and to what degree their faculty have adopted this kind of open access approach to publishing. Another example here is being able to support open access mandates. Some of our customers have very strict open access mandates where faculty need to be putting all of their content in the repository to make it openly available. So in Esploro, you'd be able to run a report here that would show you, perhaps even by department, exactly what percentage of that content is open and has files associated with it. And finally, supporting other institutional goals and initiatives like ORCID adoption, a very common strategic initiative that we hear across our partners. Again, ORCID information can be stored in that Esploro researcher profile, and so you can have good insights into who does and does not have that ORCID ID. I also wanted to show just an example of a report that could potentially be produced by Esploro. This is something I created, imagining that you'd been asked, could you tell us in the last 3 years what our scholarship and research productivity looks like? So I've run this report in Esploro. You can export the data as you see here and format it as you wish, which is what I've done in Excel. But of course, you can also export in a format directly from Esploro itself. In this case, I've broken out across the last 3 years and by academic unit exactly how much and what kind of scholarship they have produced. Of course, we also have those data visualization tools, so I can also create a great visual here where I have mapped the number of assets by academic unit, and then again, broken that out by specific asset type. Of course, we could go more narrow. We could look at research assets for a specific department or even a specific researcher. You can run analytics at a variety of levels. And in this case, for that Department of Psychology, looking at the assets by title and by the affiliated author. And then even being able to look at that usage information. Let me go to this report here. Being able to look at that usage information so I can see exactly which of these records are being viewed, which files are being downloaded, and really highlight any of that work that might be getting attention and that I might want to elevate in some way. All right, just returning here to my PowerPoint slide. I just wanted to summarize by thanking you so much for your time. That is the management of research information, and particularly the repository with Esploro, and I'm going to hand it over now to Jamie.
Thanks, Sarah. So we're going to do a virtual handoff of our presentation rights, but let's consider next the other side of the coin for repositories, which in most cases is that non-scholarly content. And I think as we've really seen here, the Ex Libris platform has that unique advantage of really unifying complementary solutions to provide our library staff with end-to-end digital workflows, the scholarly workflows, and reporting in a single system. So for patrons, the digital and the scholarly content can appear in searches alongside other relevant results, which really increases discoverability, visibility, as well as usage. And students and faculty are already familiar with the discovery interface, so they don't need to head off to some other system or web page to find this content, unless that's specific to how you would like to run the visibility of your scholarly content, as Sarah was showing us. But if we're looking in the wild, libraries are really using Alma to provide access to a number of different digital collections, image collections, special collection content, archived meeting notes, course reserves, and much, much more. So what I want to do is show you two examples of the Alma digital perspective in the wild. So I've done a search here at Harvard for Persephone, very broad search, and I see a number of different formats that are appearing as part of my search, and that includes digitized content. So we have an art book, sound recording, an image, a book, scores, and more. But I'm going to focus here on our first result, this particular art book. And I'll scroll down a bit. We have some lovely metadata that's describing this particular resource. But here we see a nice example of a custom thumbnail that's representing each page of this particular art book. And if we go ahead and click in, we'll be able to interact in quite a bit of granularity with this particular digitized material. So we can scroll in. And really interact with this resource as though we were actually at the art library reading through this particular book. So I'll move now to Primo's collection discovery tool. This page is actually National Geographic, and this is the browsable view of the library's designated collections. Collections, as represented by Alma Digital, they can have multiple layers. So a collection might have one or more sub-collections, sub-collections, and so on, really. You can go as far down as would be necessary, I would argue, based on our patron sanity. So let's go ahead and take a look at libraries and archives recordings here. And let's scroll down to see Nat Geo notables. So now we're seeing that browsable view versus the searchable view, and then interacting with a particular object. You'll of course note, and if you're familiar with Primo generally, you'll see this here and there, that if we logged in, we might see some additional content, but this is fully open, so I can go ahead and click through to interact with this particular video. In this case, National Geographic is optionally here showing the obtrusive copyright statement. So I have to agree to this copyright statement before I'm allowed to interact with the asset. And I'll go ahead and do that. And then we can go ahead and click to play and go ahead and watch this particular video that's describing one of the great First Lady of the National Geographic archives. So you'll notice that this is something that was open. There are other assets that may be can't really be openly displayed for whatever reason. And there are a number of different ways that we can lock down via what we call access rights, lock down the access based on a number of different elements. That might be whether or not the user is logged in, that could be IP range, the type of user, and so on and so forth. It's also possible to define display logic rules. So one example of this would be perhaps creating a rule that hides a record's master copy if a derivative copy exists. Perhaps only showing the quick access option in certain cases, or allowing a particular viewer to display based on a file type. So a lot of ways that you have the ability to configure Alma to properly represent your digital assets. So I'd like to shift gears a little bit now and really think about accessibility and inclusion. So as an aspect of both discovery and delivery, it really is critical that we ensure an equitable experience for everyone. And whether that means providing mechanisms to remove unconscious bias from subject terms or ensuring compatibility with screen readers, we're extremely committed to providing a fully accessible and inclusive experience and make that part of all new developments. Specifically, when we're thinking about digital assets, we're currently offering OCR functionality as well as controlled digital lending. And in the next few months, we'll be adding closed captioning functionality for videos. So we would be able to actually see the closed captioning in a video such as this. So let's consider a particular example of that. So let's imagine that a student with print disabilities is taking a course. And to accommodate that student, the professor requests that the entirety of a particular book be digitized for her course. But because this is a remote course, she also wants the rest of the class to have digital access. And this is actually made possible via controlled digital lending in Alma. So in order to comply with copyright, staff takes the print book out of physical circulation, and then digitizes that. And that particular action will maintain the own-to-loan ratio. Then they can make the digital version available for short-term loan. So let's see what this looks like for our students. So let's pretend that I'm Sarah Carr. I've logged in as Sarah here in Primo. I've done a search for the particular title that I'm interested in, and I see it's displaying here. So I'll go ahead and click in, and I see that there is a digital lending copy. I'll go ahead and click that, and we'll see the viewer in which I can interact, in this case, with the PDF. And this is the complete work, fully digitized and available for me to interact with. You'll notice that there is this particular hourglass here. If I click that, I'll see the remaining time in my session. In this case, this is a demo example. We obviously wouldn't ask our users to only access a full book for 3 minutes, but this is configurable at the library and will determine how long the loan is available for. Now let's pretend I am another student, in this case, Jamie, and Jamie is also interested in the same resource. So we'll ensure that she's logged in and do a quick reload here. And Jamie also sees that the digital lending copy is available. She notices that there is a note here that is limited to 1 user at a time. Not unlike our other users, she's going to ignore that note and go ahead and click in. And Jamie is prompted to join a waitlist. Since Sarah is already accessing that other resource, it's not available for Jamie to use at the same time. There's only 1 user in this case. If there were multiple copies of that digital book, we could have a concurrent usage available in certain cases, but in this case, it is a 1-to-1 ratio. So Jamie's going to go ahead and join the waitlist. She'll see some information about kind of what she can expect in terms of waiting. She is the first person in the list. And once she's notified that this resource is available, she'll have 15 minutes to start viewing the resource. Now, if we pop quickly back over to Sarah's experience, at the 60-second mark, we'll see a warning that says this is going to expire shortly, and we'll click OK. So at this point, Sarah can wrap up. She might decide that she wants to go ahead and close out of this. But also at the final point in which the loan is about to expire, Sarah will have the option to either renew if no one is in line, or to join the waitlist if other people are waiting. And this allows the resource to continually be loaned and available to users in a virtual atmosphere. So I'm going to pause for a second. I know I moved very, very quickly through this content, and let me stop sharing for a moment and pop into the screen. So I know we have spoken quite a bit about the different aspects, scholarly and non-scholarly, Esploro, and the digital workflows. And I see that we do have some questions in the chat. So I would be happy to use some of the remaining time to take these questions. And I'm seeing the first one here. Can you give an example of an institution public OAI address to see how the metadata displays in the OAI? I think this maybe is a question for you, Sarah.
Yeah, if we're talking about the data in Esploro, absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and put in the chat here the link to our customer community, and you can in fact access any of their live sites. It will tell you exactly what stage that they are in. In just
Great.
1 moment, I'll have that put in for you.
Thank you. I'll move on to the next question. Which metadata formats are supported in the OAI feeds? QDC, DC, mods, mark, XML. So from kind of generally, I would say that mods, mark, DC. Sarah, do you have other comments in that way?
Yep, so in Esploro that includes XML as well, everything that you mentioned, and I think that covers it.
Okay. Are there any journal hosting and review capabilities in the system?
So there is not native journal, sorry, I'm multitasking, trying to send you your link and answer questions. So there is not native journal hosting in Esploro at this time. However, our customers who are publishing journals are using OJS to do that. So that does work nicely together.
Okay, and we'll give you a second while you're continuing to answer or send in the chat. There is also a question about trials. That's something that if you are interested enough in Esploro, we could talk about separately. We could definitely do a session exclusively for your institution, a demo of both the scholarly workflows and the digital workflows to better understand what your needs are, and then determine the next steps in that approach. So I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat. So I'd be happy to open it up for other questions, or Sarah, if there's other kind of areas that you are hoping that we can touch on, I'd be happy to dig more deeply into digital functionality, or we can return kind of to the audience here.
Sure. And Jamie, you're still sharing, so if you'll just open the
Oh,
developer network link that I just put in the
I
chat. I
am
just
so
wanted,
sorry.
oh, no, you're fine. I just wanted to point out to the group, so I put the customer community chat link in the chat there, but I also put the link to our developer network. So that question about what standards are supported, what open standards are supported. When you go to this developer network link, you can see all of our REST APIs and all of the open standards that are supported. So that is all visible and available there. Oh, I see she's letting me share. Perfect. There we go. So that's up here. So you can see all of the documentation for Esploro for those REST APIs and then the open standards that we support. So you can take a look at that to get more details about that as well.
We have another question about ETD submission and review functionality.
Yeah, great. So you have a couple of options with the ETD review and submission functionality. So I'm going back into my administrative system here. So you can deposit ETDs directly with Esploro. That can be done either by staff or students. So if I go into my repository and deposit asset right here, I have to select the type of wrong button. So I go into my repository, deposit ETDs. There we go. I can select whether that was an ETD awarded by my institution or another one, and then follow the workflow here to go ahead and submit it affiliated with the student. Now, if the student wants to submit themselves, we do have a link available to do that. A lot of what's in Esploro can be configured for your institution. So I'll just point out, I'm clicking on my configuration tab here at the bottom. And if I look at my repository, I have the option to manage student deposit profiles. What you see in my system here is to deposit an undergraduate ETD submission, but you'd also be able to do this, of course, for graduate ETDs. And coming, I think next month, you'll actually be able to build profiles for other kinds of student deposits. So we frequently get questions where an institution may want to have other undergraduate student scholarship in the repository that isn't necessarily an ETD. So you'll be able to build a profile for that as well. If I open this, you'll just see that it does in fact give me this URL, and that URL I can provide to a student, and then they can go in and deposit directly there, and you can configure the types of drop downs and information and metadata you would like. The second option that you have, if you feel like that doesn't provide enough of the review functionality, is actually to use the ProQuest ETD administrator. So if you're already using it, or if you're thinking about using it, the ETD administrator can often offer some more specific workflows kind of for the breadth of that ETD management system. And then there's integration with Esploro so that any ETDs deposited through the ProQuest ETD administrator are automatically uploaded to Esploro as well, so that you don't have to duplicate that deposit work. And I said ETD many times. Hopefully that answered that question. Jamie, you're doing such a good job with the questions. Did anything else come in?
No, nothing else has come in. We do have a little bit more time, so we'd be happy to take any other questions that the audience has.
We were so concerned about making sure we didn't take all of your time. Let's see, there's a question, didn't answer my question. Marielle, maybe we missed your question. Can you put it in the chat again here? Oh, is it Marielle? Are you referring to the free trials of Esploro? So with Esploro, obviously it involves a lot of data entry in order to actually see kind of functionality for the institution itself. It's a matter of adding actual researchers and everything of that nature. So we don't have a traditional trial available that you might see with other software. That being said, there are ways that we can work with you to ensure that you can get some insights into the system and potentially try to give some of the specific functionality a test run yourself. It's not really kind of the full software trial that you're used to. As Jamie mentioned, you can definitely reach out to us. The account manager can get in touch and we can talk about options that we have there. Oh, and this is about the OA fund. Okay, let me just pull this up here. 1 moment. Oh, perfect. Okay, sorry. So for everybody else who's on the call, so Marielle has sent an example. She's looking at an XML file for a document tree. Marielle, I do have an example of that. Let me see how quickly I can get it pulled up. We certainly don't want to drag this out for people. So if I can't get it pulled up very quickly, Marielle, I'm jotting down your name and I can follow up with you directly after this, but I will do a quick search for that while we give a few more minutes for other questions to come in. Okay, thanks. Marielle says we can follow up. So I'll follow up, Marielle, with you after the call. Okay. Well, if there are no other questions, I think Jamie and I are happy to give you a few more minutes back to your day. Thank you everyone for attending. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your questions. If you do have any further questions or would like to follow up with us, you are welcome to reach out here, either to us or to your account managers. In the meantime, thank you very much for your time. We hope we have a chance to talk with you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.